Relationships. What an absolute catastrophe the world is in right now. Societies are collapsing, especially in the Western world. Marriages are down, birth rates are down, forces are up, and serious, real relationships seem to be non existent. Cultures are disappearing as we speak because they're being overrun by others with higher birth rates. The sad thing is, as much as it pains me to say it, women are primarily at fault, and they don't even know it. Welcome back, all you wandering souls, to the Wandering Soul podcast. My name is Vince, and this is episode 7. Um, Before we get started, I'd like to ask you to like and subscribe and help us spread this channel and this ministry all over the world. I'd appreciate it. You know, I know I'm going to probably get a lot of flack from this podcast, but it's something that has to be said, and I think it's important enough actually to do a whole series over time. I'm going to do some interviews and some other things, but relationships is profound, and it's being affected by a lot of different things today. Everyone and women especially need to be made aware of what's going on, so at least they have the opportunity to change their ways and make correct decisions. It may take a generation or two to write the course, but after many millennia of manipulation, and that seems like the speed of light. You see, in every way imaginable, women have been manipulated into thinking and acting in certain ways that actually are detrimental to their own safety and well being, and frankly, and a chance for a normal, happy life. They've been manipulated spiritually, emotionally, socially, psychologically. And it's not just women that have been manipulated, all of us in every way, shape, or form from the dawn of time have been lied to about everything, just in different ways. When it comes to men, as you'll soon see, since men are more logical beings, they sometimes figure it out. That's when they become dangerous to the controllers of society. If you don't believe me, that you don't believe the sheer fact that we've all been manipulated, you need to go read the book Tavistock Institute. Then perhaps you can make judgments on the facts and not just, hearsay or conjecture or rumors. Or how about some examples? Let's start with the first relationship most Christians should remember, Adam and Eve. Who can argue that Eve was not manipulated, the wrong decision, and in turn manipulate Adam to go along with her? Well, what happened in that case? Oh, that's right. They lost everything. So from the dawn of man till now, nothing has changed. If anything, it's gotten much worse and more deeper and ingrained. And the majority of women still don't have a clue. Praise God for those women that did figure that out because they used their voice to call out others on many different platforms, YouTube or TikTok. And although it seems they get destroyed by other women who refuse to be self reflecting, accuse them of breaking some apparent sisterhood pact. Logical programming, too. Just like the rest of us, we're all programmed biologically to act a certain way, to respond a certain way to different things. And it's really kind of what causes their predisposition for hypergamy or always choosing the winner or even for external validation. I found this interesting essay on Substack, and I wanted to give the writer credit for it for supporting my point. The Substack is from a writer named Echo Loves You, and the essay is called "The Consensus Trap." And I wanted to go over some of this with you because I think it really does support my point about relationships and what's going on in society now, what's wrong, and what actually really need to do to fix it. Women started this. She starts out as saying, I think it's a female author, but She starts out saying something measurable happened over the last 20 years. I kind of think maybe something measurable happened over the last perhaps 30 years. It goes back into the 90s. And women started making decisions that contradicted their own safety and their own interests. And not occasionally, systematically. Supporting immigration policies that correlated directly with increased sexual violence against them, or voting for candidates whose platforms undermined protections they relied on, defending trans athletes in women's sports while watching female competitors lose scholarships and titles. So, abandoning the spiritual frameworks that had sustained them for millennia in favor of astrology apps and tarot subscriptions. You know, if you ask why, I think it comes down to the answer that everyone else thinks that's what's right. So the consensus has become more powerful than the observable reality. It's ancient behavior meeting a modern scale. For hundreds of thousands of years, females survived depending on reading and following group consensus. Yeah, that works in a village of 150 people, but when you're on TikTok and Instagram and you have 2 billion people looking and 2 billion, millions and billions of women that are putting out what they believe in on these platforms, and others tend to follow along with that consensus. So for 20 or 25 years or so, that's what it took to rewire the whole mechanism. Instagram didn't just give women a platform, it gave them a consensus reading machine and plugged directly into evolutionary hardware that optimized for tribal survival. And they don't realize it. Social media has destroyed decision making, just created delusions of other people's lives that everybody wanted to tap into, and causes more heartbreak and depression than anything else. Like I said, consensus works on a smaller scale, but Instagram has 2 billion people. This ancient mechanism that kept women alive now keeps them scrolling and addicted to online platforms. It's the algorithm that just amplifies everything, and everything you see is just it's just immense, and you have an overwhelming feeling that everybody must feel this way. So I guess I better think the same way. The spiritual marketplace is even more seriously affected, and it clearly shows that it reveals that the mechanism has changed with perfect clarity. 25 years ago or so, women sought connection through church and prayer groups and Bible studies, and it's a framework that's sustained Western society for over 2,000 years. Now the cultural consensus shifted. Entertainment, media, influencers are all pushing the same message. Church is lame, astrology is cool, sacred becomes oppressive, profound, profane becomes liberating. The movie Wicked even turns a villain into a hero. I mean, everything's backwards and upside down. I don't think women independently decided to abandon the church. They just followed the consensus. Here's what makes the spiritual marketplace even more, I guess, dangerous now to everybody, really, not just women. You know, it makes it even more insidious than church ever was. This church positions itself as explicitly as intermediary, and a pastor between you and God, priests interpreting scriptures. The mediation was visible, and you knew you're being told to submit to human authority. You could project it, and millions did. The spiritual marketplace now is just different. It positions itself as your own intuition, your inner wisdom, your divine feminine. It makes you think you're trusting yourself while actually trusting an external framework. Astrology isn't the problem. Astrology is just a symptom. The problem is outsourcing your internal authority to whatever social media platform consensus the algorithm amplifies. The church used to say, trust the pastor, and spiritual marketplace says, trust your intuition. But that defines intuition as whatever the cards say, or whatever your chart says, or whatever phase of the moon calendar says. This is counterfeit spiritual seeking. It mimics connection to source while actually leading you away from it. A woman checking her horoscope, making a decision, doing the same thing her great grandmother did when asking the tribal elders for guidance, outsourcing authority, following consensus. The mechanism is identical. Okay, let's circle back to kind of define some solutions. You know, first of all, everyone has to realize that they're being manipulated, especially by social media, and especially in the spiritual world too. I mean, just everything affects spiritual world. Every decision a woman or even a man makes is connected in every way in the spiritual world. Everybody you sleep with, everybody you connect with, it's always going to be connected. And we just need to break away from really social media in general. And I think the Gen Z paradox kind of makes sense through this lens because social media kind of pushed consensus on an unprecedented scale, and but it also enabled counter narratives, and algorithms amplified fringe ideas to mainstream visibility. Total addressable market is the entire world, and some Gen Z women got the church's lame signal, but some actually got the Jesus is cool counter signal. The internet is a double-edged sword. Same mechanism to push women away from the father through consensus amplification also enables pathways back. But most won't take those pathways. It's that's the hard way because taking them requires something harder than following a consensus. It takes sovereignty. It takes inner work. It inner understanding of who you are. The solution isn't new church programs or better marketing or female pastors. The solution is one that got man killed 2,000 years ago. The kingdom of God is within you. Not in temples, not in algorithms, not in cards or charts or cosmic timing, although that does play into a lot of different things in God's world. It's within you. And I think women need to be more accountable to who they are, their own actions, and be self-reflective. That is a really hard thing to do. I know a lot of guys had to go through that because men actually have to earn their value to not to society, but to women. It usually takes them a lot longer to earn their value. Women are kind of, born with their value as far as the opposite sex is concerned. Their youth, beauty, and fertility, and agreeableness, and everything else. But I think there's actually a new revolution in place. If people grasped that they had direct, unmediated access to the Father, that the capacity for knowing truth was already present and functioning, what would they need any mediating system for? Religious authorities killed him for this. It threatened everything. Their power came from being necessary intermediaries. Direct access destroyed their business model. Every system since has run the same model with different branding. Priests, gurus, coaches. Now we have algorithm optimized apps with venture funding and behavioral psychology built into notification timing. All selling the same thing, outsourced authority, prefabricated narratives, your life, your choices, your suffering. The cage isn't gender specific. Men outsource authority too, to career metrics, to status hierarchies, to whatever the tribe says makes them valuable. But women's consensus thinking makes them more particularly vulnerable to algorithmic manipulation. So I truly think there really is a new spiritual revolution. And maybe Gen Z or the generation after that was is going to push it even further. A more spiritual side of things rather than a church related side of things. That when you sit quietly and pay attention to what you know before thinking about what you know, that's not cosmic energy or algorithmic wisdom. That's part of your consciousness that recognizes patterns before language is named them, that operates faster than thought, that knows things you haven't consciously processed yet. Direct access to the Father, not through priests, not through algorithms, not through consensus, through the presence that's been in your chest and your heart before you even learn to doubt it. Sovereignty means placing the full weight of authorship on your shoulders. No consensus to follow, no system to credit or blame, just you making decisions in uncertainty, owning the consequences completely. That's lonely. Trust me, that's very lonely. That requires developing discernment through practice and failure. You're going to see a lot of that. Learning to distinguish the Father's voice from fear's voices in your own heart. Most people don't choose this, not because they can't, because following consensus is more comfortable than bearing the weight of their own authority. Women who left the church for astrology didn't choose freedom, they chose a different cage. One that felt less restrictive, but it validated her instead of condemning her. But external validation isn't sovereignty. Internal validation through your relationship with with God the Father is where your sovereignty comes from. It's where you have to be to understand who you really are and how to make the right decisions and quit making the wrong decisions. Quit having a checklist of 50 different items to try to find some perfect man that you'll never ever find. Here's the deal. The door has been open since before anyone learned they needed permission to walk through it. Most won't most won't make that walk. Sovereignty is lonely, it's uncomfortable, it requires distinguishing the Father's voice from fear's voice in your own chest, in your own head. But for those who will, the freedom is absolute. The Father is waiting. I really truly think that there is a new spiritual awakening happening right now, and I'm really glad to see it. And I will actually put together some more podcasts on relationships in the future here. So I hope you all come back and listen. And thanks for watching.